So inflation is going up here in Brazil, and what I see is that most people are surprised by that. And what can I say about this? Well, I'm surprised with the fact that someone got surprised with inflation going up here because really it was so obvious that inflation was going to increase here, as it continues to be obvious that inflation will keep going up. But why do I say it's obvious that we will see inflation in Brazil? Because first, what's inflation? Inflation, in the final analysis, is the consequence of public deficit. People usually say that inflation is when the government starts printing money, and well, that's true, but in the final analysis, inflation is the consequence of public deficit, because the government only starts printing money because it needs to pay for its bills somehow, but all the money was already spent. But that's why the money printers end up being turned on, because all the money was spent, all the money is gone, but the government still has a lot of bills to pay. Anyway, but what are we seeing in Brazil? Well, Brazil changed its administration around 2 years ago, in the beginning of 2023, when Lula, our current president, took office. Now, in case you don't know Lula, Lula is a left-wing kind of guy. He's known as being a Robin Hood kind of figure, in the sense that people say that he's the president who will help the poor, who will help taking people out of misery. Many call him the father of the poor, and I actually don't disagree with this title because I think he will indeed create a lot of poor people. The thing is that Lula has always made it very clear that his government plan was to spend as if there was no tomorrow. Now, of course, he didn't say that. He didn't use this word, spend. Instead, he said that he would invest a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, our president is an investor. And people found that very nice, because back then, during the elections, things were not easy. And then here comes this guy telling us that the state will invest in us. This indeed sounds very good, right? But his economic plan has always been to put the state as Brazil's main economic agent. In his vision, the only entity that is capable of bringing development to a country is the state. The private sector won't bring development to this country because private businesses, according to his narrative, are only interested in profits. That's why, to take care of our people, of the Brazilian people, we need a strong state. Now, for me, this sounds like bullshit, frankly. But really, it's impressive how people buy this speech, how people buy this narrative. But anyway, Lula got into office, assuming Brazil's presidency, and well, the man started to work, right? So one of the first things he did was to increase the number of ministries from 23 ministries, which is already a lot, to 37 ministries. That's crazy, 37 ministries. He also announced his program called PAC 3, PAC 3, program to accelerate growth, which basically consists of huge amounts of money directed towards giant public infrastructure projects. Now, of course, these things cost a lot of money, right? And after 2 years of crazy spending, this is what we have. So, this is our deficit. We are spending more now. Our deficit is bigger now than it was during the pandemic, as you can see here in this chart. So Brazil is going through another pandemic in terms of spending without any pandemic happening. This is really serious, really serious. Now, do you remember that in the beginning of this video, I told you that inflation is the consequence of public deficit. Well, now people here in Brazil are beginning to feel the consequences of the deficit I just showed you. In the beginning of this video, I also told you that inflation is not exactly only about printing money. Actually, when the money printers start to get turned on, the country is already pretty advanced in this deficit stage. But the deficit that the government is incurring starts to be felt long before prices begin to rise, well before the government starts to print money. But how and why does this happen? Well, in case of Brazil, as our government is spending way more, it has to collect more money, right? It has to increase its revenue, which means increasing taxes. Now, if taxes go up, those who sell their services and products need to charge more from the final consumer because they are paying more taxes, so they are making less money. So this is already a way in which the deficit starts to push prices up without any money printing. Besides, the deficit also helps to push prices up due to its effect on interest rates. Because if inflation goes up, interest rates need to also go up to control inflation. And this has very serious effects on the economy. So for example, interest rates here in Brazil are already at very high levels, at 10.75%, and as we can see here, we've just started hiking rates again, and the expectations of the market are that rates are going back to the 13% levels, and this is happening in a moment in which everyone else is lowering interest rates. And curiously, in the long run, high interest rates can help to push up prices. And I know that's something counterintuitive because, after all, you hike rates to control inflation, right? To bring prices down. But if rates remain too high for too long, this will mean that people will invest less, because what's the point on investing in a real business if you can just lend money to the government and get a 13% return? But if people invest less, this means that less things or services are produced, which ends up pushing up the prices of the products and services that already exist. So this is another way in which the fiscal deficit helps to push prices up, creating inflation without any money printing involved. So to close this video, that's why I think we will continue to see inflation increasing in Brazil. It's a mindset problem if you think about it, because to overspend is the government's mindset. And that's why I'm also not surprised by the inflation we are currently seeing, because Lula has always told us that his plan was to spend and to spend and to spend. Anyway, that's it for today. See you next time.